Well, hello out there. Thanks so much for joining us today, this morning. I'm Annette Richmond. This is the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn Live show. And I'm so excited to have Dr. Kyle Elliot as my guest today. You know, Kyle, I think we met through the NRWA, but we really got to know each other. We were chatting. You were kind enough to share some insights on assessments with me. And we got to chatting, I don't know, maybe a month ago. And I'm so excited to have you here. Before we get going, I just want to say congratulations
Thank
because you
you.
are, a recent Ph.D. Dr. Kyle Elliott. So, for anyone who doesn't know you, who's watching now or on the replay, tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a career coach. In a nutshell, people reach out to me when they're looking to find jobs. I specialize in Silicon Valley and tech. So typically, senior managers and executives trying to find those really competitive roles at Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, you name it, reach out to me and say, Kyle, how do I land some of the most difficult jobs in the world? So they reach out to me and I help them figure out, okay, what makes you fabulous? And then how do we share this with recruiters and hiring managers so you can land those roles? So I'm happy to chat more with people if they want to learn more about the work I do. And I know we'll be chatting about that today as well.
We will. And, before we get going, because I know that I've, of course, I've gone through your LinkedIn profile and I know that you do work primarily with executive consultants. And as you mentioned, senior level, mainly in Silicon Valley. And I do have one question because I'm curious about how was the mix as terms of male and female of your clients? I'm just curious.
It's really interesting. I would say it's about 50-50, but a lot of the men I work with, it's their wives who send them to me, or a
Okay.
sister, or someone else who says, hey, here's my partner, or here's my brother, or cousin, or someone who you might be able to support. And typically, I work with a lot of people who are part of historically oppressed groups. So I'm gay, so I work with a lot of people of the LGBTQ plus community, folks who are BIPOC, usually people where there's some aspect of their identity that's been oppressed. And they're like, how do I navigate a job search in Silicon Valley and tech where it's a lot of white men in power? And how do I navigate that? So that tends to be a lot of my clients who are trying to navigate those power dynamics as well.
Yeah, I don't mean to, speak out of turn, but there's pretty much, older white men in positions of power in pretty much everywhere. But I would
Yes.
imagine, particularly in Silicon
Oh,
Valley,
yes.
I was aware of that when I worked in corporate, sort of ages ago. Um, and I have noticed, and it's interesting to say that the women are referred to you probably by people you've already worked with, because
Mhm.
I find that with my female clients, as we're working on their projects, that they are much more reluctant to really see and own how awesome they are, and it's a challenge for them. So, um, I you say on your LinkedIn profile that you help people. They come to you when they're feeling stuck,
Mhm.
and I have what I think that may mean, but um what can you clarify a little bit about, what that means to people, and maybe even what makes them feel that way? Is it like they're changing attitudes, they feel like they're not thriving? Is it the industry? I know that's a lot, but if you can just
Yeah.
sort of share with us, that would be great.
When I talk to people, they often say, oh my gosh, I saw the word stuck, Kyle, and that resonated with me. And there's a few different buckets of stuckness, I guess I would call it, where people tend to resonate. The first one is people saying, oh gosh, I know what I want. I want to work at this big tech company or this hyper growth startup, but I'm not really sure what sets me apart from everyone else. Help me, I'm stuck, Kyle, figuring out what makes me fabulous. And then the other bucket is these executives with 15, 20, or more years of experience who say, maybe I'm a VP of sales and I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to start over. I make six figures, multi six figures. How do I go find a career that uses my experience, but isn't a VP of sales because I don't want to do that, or isn't a head of HR, or isn't what I'm in? And how do I figure out my transferable skills and market it to maybe a marketing role if I'm a salesperson, or customer success? And they're
Mhm.
stuck in how to execute a job search if it's been a decade or two since they last executed a job search. So usually stuck in how do I make the switch, or stuck in what does the switch even look like?
Yeah, yeah. I love that you talked about the transitioning from, maybe the same type of position, but in a different industry, or the same industry, but a different type of position. And, you know, you say on your website that you help people, I like this, rethink, reimagine, and recreate their careers, and that there you have a methodology for that. So without giving away, sort of the secrets, can you clarify a little bit about kind of what that involves?
For me, the first session with probably 98% of my clients is metaphorically sitting in the car and saying, where are we driving? My
Okay.
partner and I, we live in Southern California. Recently, sometimes when we went down to Los Angeles to go to Disneyland, where pass holders, gas would be like 7.50. So I told my partner, I'm like, we have to know where we're going. We're not just going to go on a Sunday drive and check things out. So with my clients, I like doing the same thing and saying, where are we driving? And what's our next immediate goal? Okay, today's Disneyland, or maybe today you want to drive to Amazon and get a job. And then what are the long term goals? How does Amazon support, for some people, more work life balance? Or how does it support retiring in Germany in 10 years, or opening an Airbnb in Australia? So I like working with people to figure out what's that next stop on the GPS, and then how does that support your short term and long term goals before that? And then us working backwards and saying, what are the steps that you and I can take together to get there? Because a lot of people would get stuck. I need a resume. But then, okay, what's next? And what are all the steps and how's it supporting it? And sometimes they just kind of drive like they're on a Sunday drive. And that can be great sometimes. But right now, with gas so expensive, with life so expensive, we want to know where we're going so we're not just wasting our time and energy and money.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting that you mentioned the idea of people relocating. I had thought until recently that that was unusual. And yet, in the last maybe 60 days, I have spoken to one person who relocated from Texas, I believe, to now living with his wife in Mexico. I spoke with someone not long ago who is thinking in the next year or so to move with his wife to France. And, I mean, and that is two people. I mean, my network isn't incredibly small, but it's not, vast either. And that I would have conversations like that. It's kind of eye opening to me. So, one of the things that I'm curious about, because, I work with people that are sometimes wanting to get promoted. And when you're talking about the whole idea of sort of rethinking and reimagining, I was wondering if that can be done like at your same company.
Yes. So I would think about that next destination you want and also getting clear on that. So when people come to me, they say, ooh, I want A, B, and C in my next job. I want a bigger title. I want more responsibility. I want more pay. And we'll map it all out. And I say, okay, help me understand why you're just looking externally and not internally. And they say, oh, I never thought of that. That's a great idea, Kyle. So it can be helpful to also look internally, or sometimes also looking at previous companies. Some clients say, oh, I guess I could go back to this past company. I loved it. And now that I have 2 or 5 years more experience, or 10 years more experience, I could go back into a higher level role. So those same principles can also be applied. And the key, again, is to really know, where are you going in the short term, and then how does that support your longer term and life goals and dreams as well?
Yeah, that is interesting. The idea of going back to the same company. Um, do does that happen often, or are people generally wanting to move on to something completely new?
I wouldn't say it's super frequent, but it happens enough where I'm like, oh wow, I'm sometimes surprised. And people say, oh, only reason I left was it was just too small at the time, or I wanted something new. And I'm seeing, especially in tech a lot, these boomerang employees where, in order to get more salary, to get more responsibility, get the title they want, they have to leave and then come back. And oftentimes our teams are new by that point as well. If you leave a company for more than a few years, especially in tech, the entire organization is often changed. Even the C-suite, people are
Mhm.
moving in and out pretty quickly. So you can get an entirely new experience at a company you were really passionate about, where you loved the mission, the values, the product, or the service that they had to offer.
Yeah, part of the reason that I was interested in that is I was working with someone recently who was with a large company for I don't know, maybe 15 years, and decided they wanted something new and something different. And so they went to a new company. They got a new position, a little bit higher position, and it was a smaller, more of a startup type company. And then the prior company bought the new company. So now
Wow.
here and that's what brought him to me because he said, I was there and I loved it for a long time. I wanted something new. I went out, I was there a couple of years and now I'm back with them again. So is that something that you see if people are, you know, and the reason I think about this, and you mentioned the idea how companies change. I worked in publishing before I was in the career field. And it was a small publishing company, a few different, small magazines, and we shared an art department. And we had very talented people in graphic design, and one graphic designer they were all fabulous, and he decided he was going to leave our little nest,
Yeah.
and he went and he got a job. It was some large magazine. I'm thinking like Vogue, but not Vogue. And
Yeah.
he found that instead of working on 4 different magazines every month, that he was now doing like 1 or 2 pages because
Wow.
it was so vast. Do you find that with people?
Yes, I was talking to a client, I think yesterday about this, is they're like, I'm wearing so many hats at this smaller organization. That's the draw of some of these larger tech companies. I work with a lot of people who are coming from maybe a startup or from somewhere just outside of tech. And they say, ooh, I want to work at a bigger company so I can just wear one hat or maybe 2 or 3 hats compared to the 10 hats I'm wearing now. I'm doing social media, I'm doing the website, I'm doing graphic design, I'm in charge of our blog, I'm in charge of data and marketing analytics, all these things. And going to these bigger companies can allow you to just wear one hat instead of wearing all of these. And then what I'm also seeing with a lot of clients too is saying, oh, I want to switch job functions. So maybe I'm doing business analytics now and I want to move to product management or product marketing. You can do that internally as well. And it's often easier to do that
Mhm.
internally. I just wrote a article for the Product Schools blog. And oftentimes one of the easiest transitions to make, or I won't say easiest, but one of the less difficult transitions to make is to look internally and make that transition. A lot of organizations have programs set up for you to make a move internally.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say that because I'm an advocate for people doing that, even if they want to go to a different company, that they change either internally or like if I'm working in marketing, that I move to, I don't know, PR or something different in my current company, or
Hmm.
even, or I look for something in marketing at a different company and then move after I'm there for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's kind of might be a two-step, but it is a little less challenging.
Yes, that's what I tell clients. I say, let's do one move at a time. Okay, let's do location first, or industry first,
Mhm.
or do that job function first, or the
Yeah.
title. Let's choose which of these is most important and then stack them and say, after each of these transitions, let's target another one. Maybe 2 at a time if it's small changes, but let's be mindful and then say which of these is going to support the next one. And with tech, just as an example, when
Mhm.
people are trying to move into tech and they've never worked in tech, I say, okay, yes, Amazon and Google, these are great companies, but is there a lily pad role or two or a lily pad company or two that you want to target before just going for these big ones? If you've never worked in tech and then you want to go get a job at Amazon, it might be a little challenging. So are there roles or companies we can target before just going for one of the biggest tech companies in the world?
Yeah, I hear that, and I know that tech people think of tech and, if you're working at tech, you can have a cool job because you're in tech. And yet you can have a cool job. You don't necessarily have to be in tech. You could be
No.
someplace else and have a cool job. And the idea of being there when something's needed. When I did work in publishing, there was one woman who wanted to be a writer. I was a writer and an editor there. And so she took a job. She was an admin for one of the publishers, one of the owners. And she used to, if a writer was on vacation, she would go to that publication and say, "Oh, can I help you this month? I'm happy to write something for you." And she did this. And you know what? When an opening came, who was the person? It was her. And so she
Mhm.
was able to get a job doing what she wanted at a company where she was comfortable and happy. And I think people, and that's, I guess, why they come to you is because
Yeah.
they think, oh, I want to do this. And I'm just going to, start applying, change my resume and start applying to things that are completely different.
And then people often realize, Kyle, I want work-life balance. I want to be remote. I want all these things. And I say, you've told me this list, but maybe Amazon isn't in alignment. Maybe Netflix isn't in alignment. Maybe Google's not in alignment. And sometimes they are. But I always like people starting with those long-term goals, those short-term goals, and then what they need and want, as well as what they don't want and can't have in that next job. And using that as really a litmus test. So when opportunities come up, whether it's a role or a company, we can weigh both of those, the role and the
Mhm.
company, against that initial list and say, okay, during session one, you said you want work-life balance, and during session two, you're bringing me Amazon. Is this in alignment, or is maybe we need to have a conversation and find a company with a little more work-life balance?
Are you finding that, because I read that and I've talked to other people, that priorities have changed and that the pandemic, one thing people did have the flexibility, they worked from home, they could, I don't know, take the afternoon off and go to their child's school play and then work a little later. I mean, I don't have kids, I have dogs, so they're here whenever. But are you finding that with the clients that you work with, that have you seen, because you've been doing this for a while, have you seen a shift?
Yes, the last 2 or 3 years, that first session, I've seen a huge shift in what people say they want. A lot more people wanting to be remote or at least hybrid, a lot more people wanting flexibility in their work. And then third, what I'm seeing is a lot more people wanting their work to have an impact or to get some value from their work. So not just doing work to do work, but saying, how does this bring purpose and meaning to my life? How am I making a difference in the world? And it doesn't have to be literally changing the world, but is there some sort of impact here? Can I feel like I'm in alignment with this product, with the service, and people saying, I just need to feel something through my work and
Mhm.
feel like I'm not just clocking in and clocking out. And that last one's actually been the biggest change I've seen, is people wanting to make a bigger impact, a bigger difference through their work.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you can do that. I worked in nonprofit for a while. That's how I came to work in the career field. That's kind of what I fell into after I got my master's in psych. And there were accountants that worked at the company, and the reason they were accountants, but they wanted to work for a company that they felt aligned with their values. So it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in a service position of some type to
No.
feel like you're making an impact.
Exactly. People say they just want to work for a company that's doing more good than bad in the world right now, is what, at least how a lot of, I would summarize how a lot of my clients are talking about it.
Yeah. So, I would be remiss if I have you here and people are watching, they're going to be watching on the replay. If I didn't ask you to share just a few strategies that people can use, if they're watching this and they are feeling like they're kind of stuck and they want to change.
My favorite place to start, I am, for the people watching, I literally have a whiteboard here. And this is what I like using with my clients during our first session.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I'll divide it into 4 quadrants with my clients. I actually created this activity almost 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, with my partner, JV. He's one of the pickiest people I know. And the reason I like using him is he's really great inspiration. I said, JV, let's write out what you need in your next job. What are you not compromising on? what do you want? What are your preferences, but you're willing to be flexible? What don't you want in that next job? And then what you can't you have? What's a deal breaker? Well, he had over 40 things on this list when we were looking for his next job. So if you're a little stuck, I would start there and just start writing out everything that comes to your mind. Because a lot of people will have one or two or three ideas. I want a good paying job. I want to work for a company that matters. By like getting more specific, and then when you're looking at jobs, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on your dream company's careers page, you can use this to quickly weed in and weed out jobs that might be in alignment or out of alignment with this list. Instead of going through and each time you look at a job, say, oh, is this salary good? Oh, am I willing to relocate? Do some of that work up front, spend an hour or two. And then if you have a partner or a dependent or other people that are really important in this job search, involve them as well in that whiteboard activity. So then you can quickly go through and make quick decisions when you're vetting companies in or out of the consideration for the job search.
Yeah, I love that. So what are the 4 quadrants? Like must have, must not have, and then what are the others?
And then the other 2 are here's things I want, but I'm willing to compromise. So it could
Okay.
be you need 100K a year, but you want 150K salary a year. And then it could be I can't have a micromanaging boss. And then some clients have said, I want a boss who's a woman who's been there at least 3 years. Like you can get really specific. I think of it as manifesting that next job and putting out there everything you want. My partner, for example, said he wanted a hook in his office or his cubicle to hang his purse. And he got it. He started writing out all these things that were important. He wanted to wear business casual because he worked in healthcare but didn't want to wear scrubs. So you can get specific and start writing that out. And I think of it as really dreaming beyond just the salary or location or title. Really get picky as you go out there and allow that to guide your job search.
So it sounds almost like a job search, like a vision board, but
Yes.
written and very, very detailed. And I love that. I was taught years ago as a vocational counselor because people always do the pros and the cons, oh, this and
Mm-hmm.
that. And I was taught to have the clients that we work with look at it in terms of criteria, which sounds very similar to what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. These are my criteria, and each job is measured against that rather than looking at a job. And one of the things I like about what you're talking about, I think it's a fabulous idea, and I may want to I don't know, borrow that, uh, is that people are concerned with culture, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to know what is the culture like. And I know the worst positions I had, my last corporate position was like going to jail. I mean, it was a tiny little firm and it was just not for me. And it sounds like sort of sussing that stuff out really can help you sort of find the right culture for you as well.
Exactly, and deciding what's important. For some people, it's remote. For other people, they want to be in person. For some people, they want to make sure some aspect of diversity is really clear on the website and thinking what's important to you. I've had some clients who literally have 3 items on the entire list. They say, all I
Wow.
care about are these 3 items. And then other clients have had dozens and dozens because they're really particular about what they want. And there's no right or wrong, but it's just getting clear on what you want next. And then as you write it out, you'll start to be able to research those companies. And then you can turn these criteria into questions as well. So if, for
Hmm.
example, work-life balance is important, when you're networking with people, you can then ask, oh, can you tell me a bit about what the work-life balance is like here, or how your organization cares for employee mental health? So you can
Hmm.
use these questions not only when networking, but then when interviewing as well to just make sure this company is really a fit, or oh, maybe I need to pass on this one.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the company website might be deceiving. Although I've read that like diversity is been increasingly important to companies and increasingly important to job seekers. When they go in, they want to see that. But is it just on the website and then you go in and
Hmm.
it's you know, all the same. I don't know. I'm careful about the words I want to use, but you go in
Yeah.
there and everyone is the same. They look the same. They talk the same. They think the same. So I guess, that's part of what I would think important about having, in person in the company before you make any decisions.
Yes, exactly. And then having those questions that then you can use during those networking and interviewing. I love the website Blind. It's kind of like Glassdoor and Reddit had a baby. So you can go there and also figure out more information and vet some of these companies. A lot of my clients will make a list and say, here's my companies. And then start having columns and spreadsheets. I work with a lot of tech people, and they'll say, here's how they line up with these 4 quadrants, Kyle, and start ranking them and say, here's how the 20 rank. This one has 17 points, this one has 12 points. And it might be helpful to start ranking them based on these criteria as well. And then say, oh, Amazon seems great, but actually this one aligns more with my
Mhm,
goals. And I don't want to
mhm.
bash Amazon. It's just a
Oh,
lot
no,
of people
no.
come to me with that as their target and then realize it doesn't align with what they really want.
Well, it's also, and I don't really know much about Amazon except that I shop there all the time, but I do know that for me, my mindset when I went into a position was to see what could be better.
Hmm.
Whenever, if even if I'm in a volunteer position and I'm looking at the organization, and my instinct is, what can be better? What can we do more to
Yeah.
make it more, I don't know, engaging or whatever. And some companies are very open to that. And other companies, I worked at one company, it was this another small company, and it was family owned. And their attitude was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, you know what? I didn't fit there. When they did have to let people go, I was the first one out the door because I didn't fit and I was happy to go. And
Hmm.
um, I think it is so important, as you say, that a company may sound fabulous. And I'm sure dream companies are like dream jobs. There's none that are as dreamy as you think they're gonna be.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. And then doing your due diligence and saying, oh, does this align with that picture I've had in my head or how people describe it? And then also, what's really important with these larger companies in particular is then to see, okay, what does it look like on this team under this VP? Because I've had 2 clients work at the exact same company and have really different experiences depending on the team and the VP that they're under as well.
Yes, yes, I hear that too, and I've had that experience in my own life. It's all about, for me, it was all about the boss that I had at the time. Was it someone who encouraged me to sort of reach my potential, or someone who just wanted me to, sit in my chair and work, work, work with my head down? And it makes a big difference. So, I do want to ask you a little bit about assessments, because you and I had a
Yeah.
long discussion about that. So I know that you use some of them. And I'm curious as to sort of which ones you choose and why you choose those particular assessments, with that particular client.
Yes, so I'm certified in several different assessments. One is the strong, so it's through Myers-Briggs, and it compares people to individuals across 130 different careers who are satisfied in their careers. And it does a lot of different things, but this is the section of the assessment that my clients love the most. They say, "Ooh, I'm similar to this person," or "I'm not." And it doesn't say you'll be great in this career. It doesn't say that you should do this career. It just says you'll have a lot in common with these people. And a lot of clients who are stuck, as we talked about earlier, who are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do next. I just don't want to be doing what I'm doing now, like this, because it uses data from tons of people. It's empirically tested and can say, oh, this is something for me to explore. And it gives them ideas. So when clients don't know what they want to do next and they're stuck, I like this as a starting point because we can have conversations. Because if I
Mhm.
just say, give me some ideas, people say, so this can be
Yeah.
helpful to have some data to guide them. Recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I also got certified in the Strong through Gallup, and not the Strong, the Strengths Finder through Gallup.
Oh, yeah,
And
cool.
we were going to talk about that, so it's perfect I'm here, and it's been amazing. It tells you your strengths across a number of different talents and says, here's your top strengths. The likelihood of you and someone else having the same 34 strengths in the same order is 1 in 33 million. So it's very unique to you, this
Wow.
profile. And I mostly use that in an executive coaching sense, less of a career coaching sense, more executive coaching, letting people know here's the strengths that you're doing really well at. How can we leverage those? And then here's ones to watch out for. But I've also used it with interview coaching clients who say, I don't know how to answer what are my strengths in an interview, and I don't know how to answer, here's some things I need to watch out for, areas of development. So I've actually started using it with my interview coaching clients when they're not sure how to talk about their strengths and their areas of opportunity. I say, let's see what the assessment has to say and see if any of this resonates with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
It's
those are your
been, yeah.
those are your go-tos, the Clifton strengths and then the strong. It's interesting because I worked with the strong 20 something years ago when I first became a vocational counselor, and I had kind of discounted it and not thought about using it, currently. But as you're talking about it, I think that might be interesting. I wonder if it would be interesting for people who are not necessarily changing careers, but want to sell themselves. Do you think it could work in that, or is it pretty much just for sort of job change?
I think you could use it as well because there's three other aspects of the assessment. And the first one tells you across these 6 different general occupational themes
Mm-hmm.
where you fit in. And you could say, oh, this is me, I'm realistic. And you could leverage that. I would use, if you're trying to sell yourself, maybe the Strengths Finder a little more. I think that could be
Mm-hmm.
more powerful. And I'm also certified in the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI. So I think that could be leveraged as well. And you can use that both to learn about your personality, and that also gives you the option to learn about different careers that might suit you based on your personality. I just don't use that one as much because I find the presentation of the strong is more direct for people. And they say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's 10 top occupations for me to explore. I'm going to go check those out. And
Well,
what I like doing with that is seeing what's similar. So, ooh, I don't like operations manager, but what is it about operations manager that I do like? And is there anything similar to this I should check out?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, I love that, and I'm very interested, and we chatted about this previously. I'm certified in the MBTI as well, and I do love it. I think it's very interesting, and I think it can really tell people a lot about them. And I am new to learning about the Clifton Strengths Finder. For some reason, I don't know, I was in a hole somewhere, and then I in the last year or so, I talked to so many coaches, resume writers who use that
Mhm.
with their clients, and the clients find it really helpful. So I need to check into that some more.
Yeah, I
So
find it, I've been surprised. I've used it probably 4 or 5 times since I got certified a few weeks ago. I'm doing another
mhm,
session today with someone. And I find the language is really easy to dissect and understand. So for job seekers, it can be helpful to be like, oh, one of my top strengths is strategic. I'm very good at strategy, and kind of diving into that. And it's more nuanced than that, but at a high level, it can be helpful to quickly identify what you're good at and then see, oh, here's how it plays in with my other strengths as well, which are unique to me compared to other people who may be strategic. I'm strategic and individualization. Here's how that looks for me compared to other people who might have other top strengths combined.
yeah, no, that is very interesting, and it also sounds, because you're talking about the language that when I was in school studying writing, one of the things that the teacher, I'll never forget, said, never use a quarter word when a nickel word will do. And it sounds like that might be part of what makes the strengths so sort of powerful, is the language that's used.
Hmm. Yeah, the language. And I find it's really accessible. The reports they provide clients are just really easy for them to take action. And you can do a little bit with the report, or you can do a lot and spend time on each strength and really dive in and go in. They have full podcast episodes on every strength, they have videos. So it's up to you how far you take it.
So I know also that you do a lot of and you mentioned interview coaching. And
Hmm.
I am an advocate for people to sort of prepare in advance. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. I know people say, I've heard, is, well, I don't want to come off rehearsed. I don't want to come off as phony. And so when I think about preparing, I'm not thinking about memorizing, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that, and how you work with your clients in that way.
So I don't like preparing for common questions. So with my clients, we won't go through 100 common questions and
Mm-hmm.
develop answers because then you get question 101 in the interview and you say, oh gosh, I never prepared for this.
Uh-huh.
So instead, I like preparing like politicians, or that's how I've always called it. Let's prepare like a politician. Let's say, here's your top 6 talking points, 6 stories you want to communicate during your interview. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get asked a question, and then you look at your 6 stories and say, which of these 6 best fits here? Similar to how a politician has their talking points. And
Mm-hmm.
this was the way I explained it for years. Well, over the last few years, I've actually worked with a number of politicians, top advisors. And they said, we literally did this. We had a binder and we had our talking points. And if they were asked something outside the talking points, they just used a talking point and massaged it to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I prep clients. You have your key talking points and you go into the interview with that and you make them work. And if you have diverse enough, strong enough talking points, are going to work for nearly any question that's thrown your way. And then I'll do a little bit of mock interviewing with clients to practice questions that may fall outside of those talking points and how to work them in. But I find that to be a lot more helpful than just trying to memorize the most common questions out there, because recruiters and hiring managers are trained to ask you questions that you haven't prepared for. And they're going to ask you questions that you're not ready for. So you have to have answers ready regardless.
No, I agree with you. And one of the things that I tell the clients that I work with that, the career stories that I have them give me that become part of their resume, those are going to help them in their job interview because
Mhm.
a lot of the questions that they may get asked are not necessarily phrased in "tell me about this or that," but they employers want to know that you've done what you've done before because you can do that for them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that
yeah.
resume, I always like starting with those documents before diving into interview coaching if I'm doing that with clients. So then we can use those and build those out into stories. This was a great bullet on your resume that you're proud of. Let's build that out into an entire story for your interview. Or, oh, you have 3 great bullet points on here about project management. Can we build this out into your project management
Mhm.
philosophy or your leadership philosophy and have a whole story around it? And then people realize, oh, I already have a lot of these stories. My job is just to really compile them together into a digestible format for that interviewer.
One of the things that I do recommend people prepare in some form is they tell me about yourself because I think
Hmm.
every single person is asked that, and people, I've heard people I know on the phone having interviews, and I can hear that they've been asked that question. They're like, well, I started in college and I was studying this and I knew immediately. And then in my first job, and before you know it, the interviewer is like, you
Yes.
know, and I think part of the reason that I think of having some kind of preparation is so people don't ramble. And it sounds
Hmm.
like what you're doing is the same type of thing that you have the talking points so you're not just rambling.
Hmm. Exactly. And for that, tell me about yourself. It's the same thing. Having your talking points down, and you may not even be asked, tell me about yourself, but knowing here's the key points I want to communicate during my interview. Oftentimes for clients, I say, have a piece of paper in front of you and know these are the key stories and talking points you want to communicate. And as you share them in the interview, you can cross them off and make sure you hit everything at some
Mhm.
point during the interview and weave it in. And then at the end, when they ask, is there anything else you want to share? You can literally look down at that piece of paper and be like, oh, here's 2 points that we didn't cover. I want to make sure you know them. Or here's 2 big accomplishments we didn't talk about. Is it okay if I share them with you briefly? And then you hit everything that you wanted to bring into that interview.
What a fabulous piece of advice. So, I have to ask you, what do you enjoy most about what you do?
I enjoy knowing that my clients are changing the world. I get to work with these really fabulous, amazing people working at some of the top companies in the world. And I typically, my role is helping them land those jobs. And oftentimes, people will hire me once they've landed in those jobs to keep working together. But it's exciting knowing that my clients are leading diversity at some of the top tech companies or project management or engineering. And I'm like, ooh, I saw this update on my app. I had a client that helped with that. And knowing that they're doing this work that's impacting millions and billions of people, that's the most exciting for me, that just ripple impact through my work.
Yeah, that is exciting. I work with some clients too that are doing really cool things, and I feel like I, play a little part in that. So I love that as well. So, what is something that would surprise people about you?
I'm an introvert, so a lot of people are surprised that I am very, very introverted. On the Myers-Briggs, you don't say you're super introverted, not super introverted. So I'll pretend I'm not certified for a moment, but I'm very introverted. If you have an introvert to extrovert scale, I'm way over on the introvert side. So my least favorite thing is networking in person, going to a conference and speaking to people, small talk. I know you and I will be at a conference next month. I don't like that stuff. I like deep one-to-one
Mhm.
conversations where we dive into the topics we're really passionate about. And I teach people how to network for a living still and show them that you can step outside that comfort zone and have meaningful conversations with people. And it's just on the other side of taking that risk and stepping beyond that comfort zone.
Yeah, well, I fall into that category as well. I'm not as far maybe on the introvert side, but and it's really funny because I spent so much of my life really working in a service business, most of it bartending. And so I do talk to people everywhere. I learned to just talk to people. You can talk to anyone, and I feel comfortable doing that. I talk to people in line at the grocery store. If I'm at Trader Joe's looking at something, I'm talking to people standing next to me. But and when you talk about the conferences, and part of the reason that I didn't go into working sort of one-on-one with clients at a business all the time is because I need that break. So if I go to a conference, I love mingling around with people, but I will be spending one night in my hotel room, having room service for dinner because I
Hmm.
need that break from people. I don't
Hmm.
I get some energy, maybe more than you, but I need my downtime. I need my away.
Yeah. And it's finding that and figuring out what works for you and creating that self-care throughout.
So we are getting close to the end. This has
Oh,
been a
yes.
fascinating conversation for me. And but we've talked about a lot of things, but I'd like you to share whatever you feel, maybe I haven't asked you that you would like to share, you think is important for people to know.
One of the biggest pieces of advice I give people is to figure out what sets you apart from other job seekers. I have a lot of people reach out to me and say, Kyle, I'm applying to all these jobs and I'm qualified. I hit every single item in the job posting. And the thing is, most other people often will be hitting a lot of the items in the job posting. So if you find yourself in the situation where you're applying to jobs where you're qualified, you meet all the requirements or exceed them, your job is then to take it a step further and figure out what sets you apart from everyone else who also meets or exceeds all the requirements in the job posting, and then to communicate that in your resume, on your cover letter, on your LinkedIn profile, when you're networking, when you're interviewing. And if you're stuck, my favorite place to start is just to text three people. Everyone watching, everyone listening, I encourage you to text three people and say, what makes me fabulous? And then gather their feedback, see what the similarities are, and then share that and communicate that in all your career documents. And that'll help you stand out in that saturated job market because they'll say, oh, we have all these engineering managers that are the same, but here's one who has these three things that set them
Mhm.
apart from everyone else. And you're helping the recruiter or hiring manager really do their job for them, which is to figure out what person is most uniquely qualified for this role.
Yes, that's true. I That is such an important point. People are different. Everybody has something that they do, maybe a little bit differently than somebody else. And so that is so important. And I want to thank you so much. Are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn if they should wish to
Yes,
connect with you? Okay.
absolutely.
Well, again, it has been a pleasure to spend a little more time with you after chatting with you a bit ago. And I thank you so much for being here with me today. For everyone else, I am not here next week because of the holiday weekend upcoming, but I will be back after that at 11 a.m. on Thursday morning. So have a great rest of your day.